Cersei Lannister's rage was justified. Welcome back to another character analysis by Geek Vibes Nation. I am your host, Tia, and I am back with another Game of Thrones character analysis. My first was analyzing Viserys Targaryen from the Game of Thrones series, not the Viserys Targaryen from House of the Dragon, but the one played by Harry Lloyd in the original HBO show, the original Game of Thrones show. But as I go back and I continue to rewatch Game of Thrones, I watch these fantastic other character analysis on YouTube by phenomenal people. I am just sitting here kind of reevaluating my thought process on certain characters, and one of those being Cersei Lannister. Now, obviously, Cersei is that person who you absolutely love to hate. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things I don't like about Cersei. I, for one, absolutely hated her relationship with Jaime. One of my favorite things about season seven, even though season seven gets a lot of criticism, one of my favorite things was Jaime finally realizing that he and Cersei were so toxic together that he ran away. And one of the things that got me the angriest in the last season of Game of Thrones was Jaime completely disregarding Brienne and going back to Cersei. So I do want to get that out of the way. And little things like the fact that um, you know, Cersei did kill Missandei, and that I do not agree with because Missandei was a fan favorite, certainly one of my favorites, and that obviously was a horrific thing to watch and was a turning point in Daenerys' story in that final season. So I want to get a few of those things out of the way, saying I absolutely do not think that those actions by Cersei were justified. My main thing is just looking at Cersei as a whole. Again, when we first watch the series, you sit there and you go, she's very bitter, she's angry, she's just not a pleasant person altogether. I mean, she is the reason why Ned was killed. She plotted against her own husband. There were times where you thought that Cersei didn't have a soul at all. And again, she was one of those villains that you love to hate because even when she was bad, she was so good. I was rewatching clips such as the one where, that very iconic line where she says to Littlefinger, power is power, or the moments where she, gets her revenge against the religious order and all that. I mean, all phenomenal scenes, phenomenal moments. But I sit there and my analysis came from things such as watching people talk about characters like Tywin Lannister, right? Um, and if you've never watched a video on any of the history of the families in the Game of Thrones lore, I do suggest doing so because George R.R. Martin, as an author, just put so much effort into his characters and their legacies that it's phenomenal that people can even make these type of videos. So, talking about Tywin Lannister, what he wanted from his family, what he wanted from his children, and when you look at it, everything he wanted from a child was not in Jaime. It was not in Tyrion. It was in Cersei. And simply because Cersei was a girl and not a boy is the reason why Tywin doesn't recognize Cersei as probably his most successful child. If you're weighing it as Tywin wanting a child most like him, it's Cersei. Her strategy and all that was just like exactly what Tywin would do. And if you look at the lore of what Tywin did in his life, Cersei pretty much mirrors that to a T. It's just, again, she was born a woman and not a man. So there's that, right? Let's kind of go through Cersei really quickly. I'm not going to do a huge, history character analysis because there are far better videos out there than this. And I'm just trying to focus more on why I think the events in her life justify who she became later in life. But, Cersei, obviously the daughter of Tywin. First of all, she obviously has this very unhealthy relationship with her brother Jamie. And she also has this very much, this very hateful attitude towards Tyrion, not only because Tyrion Tyrion's birth did take Cersei's mother from her, but because Tywin hated Tyrion so much and because Cersei wanted so much to be like Tywin, I would imagine that she reflected some of that rage for herself. But hang on, let me take a sip of water. My throat's getting dry already. But there's that, right? And at some point during the Targaryen reign, the last reign of the Mad King, right? Tywin was the hand of the king. Cersei spent a lot of time in King's Landing and everything, and this was a time where the Targaryens were still very much in play, where they were the rulers and they were very much still looked at in a very prominent role as in society anyway. And so Cersei really wants to marry Rhaegar, the oldest son of Aerys Targaryen, the older brother of Daenerys and Viserys in Game of Thrones. We don't really get to meet him. I do not count that little flashback we get. I forget if it's in season 7 or season 8. That was just a stand-in actor. If we would have gotten a real Rhaegar Targaryen, he would have looked way different. But anyway, that's besides the point. Everyone wanted Rhaegar Targaryen, and Cersei thought that she was going to have the best chance, right? She was Tywin's daughter, the daughter of the Hand of the King. I mean, the Lannisters are a very powerful family. It only made sense to link the Lannisters and the Targaryens. She does not get that because of issues between Aerys and Tywin. Again, I would suggest looking all that stuff up on YouTube because it is very interesting. So you have that. So boom, that's already a you know, something against Cersei that would make her feel very down on herself as if she wasn't good enough to get someone as, catchworthy as Rhaegar, right? In fact, the marriage between Rhaegar and Elia Martell already was something of a controversial one because the Lannisters looked down upon the Tyrells. So that was one thing. And the fact that then Rhaegar, lusted after Ned's sister, that was another thing. So you have that. Now the Targaryens are gone, and Cersei is marrying Robert Baratheon. Okay, so Robert Baratheon, right, is also a catch, even though by the time we see him in Game of Thrones, he's kind of less of what you would traditionally call a catch, although I am not here to shame if you found Robert Targaryen attractive. I do not blame you at all, right? Certainly the Baratheons are a very powerful family in Westeros, right? Anyway, so Cersei's about to is marrying Robert Baratheon. He's the new king. That's already status where she's feeling like the best thing ever, right? The luckiest woman in Westeros. And again, she can't catch a break because not only is Robert just not good husband material, he's not faithful, he's a drunk, he's doesn't care at all about Cersei's opinions or anything, and he is also um, mourning Lyanna Stark, the same person who Rhaegar Targaryen also had his eyes on. So in Cersei's mind, she is competing with a dead woman, which, I mean, you can never win against that. So now she's married to Robert Baratheon, and she has to, and because of the time and spear that Game of Thrones takes place in, Cersei just has to sit there as a quote unquote dutiful wife, being in a loveless marriage, forced to, lay in bed with him, the same man who can't even like call her the right name in bed, who drinks and who goes off with other women and who physically assaults her, as we do see at some point. Um, and then she's forced to bear his children. I mean, obviously, we know it's not his children, but he seems to think that they're all his children. So, I think that people don't realize what, and in the show, I believe it's 17 years that this is happening. I don't think people realize that the bitterness that can build up after 17 years of having to go through something like that. I mean, she is in this world where she is told just to grit and bear things, and she is feeling jaded. We see that very much in the scene. I forget what it's called now. Oh my God. When Stannis Baratheon is trying to get onto King's Landing, I mean, she's very jaded. She was once all, what's it called? Bushy tailed, big eyes, whatever, like Sansa. And we even see Sansa towards the end of Game of Thrones getting jaded just as Cersei did because they realized that the world in Westeros, in Game of Thrones, in A Song of Ice and Fire is not the kind world that they thought it was, especially for women. Especially for women. So I can see Cersei's anger. I can see her rage is justified almost. Again, she does a lot of things that are not justified. I know we were all sitting there looking at her in season one going, "Oh, you mother effer, don't you dare with Ned." Although, if you really want to split hairs, Cersei did advocate for the release of Ned Stark, whereas Joffrey was the one who pretty much said off with his head, but that's neither here nor there. Cersei got more aggressive as the seasons went on because in that moment it was an all-out sprint for the Iron Throne, and she is feeling as if she has no one to stand on. And if you know a lot about the Lannisters, they're a very proud family. Um, and in that moment, throughout the course, she's losing Tywin. She's never trusted Tyrion. She's losing Jaime. Her children are all dying. So it's becoming one by one where she has no one. And so she has no reason to be a loving person. She, it's almost like a Jedi turning into a Sith, right? She's letting the hate flow through her and letting it dictate as opposed to trying to remain or perhaps being a redeemable person. I don't know if Cersei was ever redeemable because I will say that my ideal ending for Cersei was her dying. Whether it be by the hands of Tyrion or I honestly wanted it to be by the hands of Jaime. In season 8, if you remember, one of the episodes ends with Jaime having just slept with Brienne and leaving to go back to King's Landing. I thought he was going back there to kill her, because he knew it had to be him. And Cersei's prophecy always was that her younger brother would kill her, and I believe that she came out first. And Jaime came out second. They're twins. So I mean, there were like we can go on and on about season 8 forever and talk about all the inconsistencies that the writers did in comparison to what we thought they were setting up throughout the series. But we at this point all know how it's 2023. I think 2018 is when the final season aired. I think we just have to accept that that was a terrible ending and that the writers just simply gave up at that point. But whatever. Um, yeah, I don't know. The more I see it, it's like I see Cersei's rage as justified. When I watch clips of her, I sit there and go, yes, she is this person that you are, rooting against. And when push comes to shove, you're going to root for everyone else other than her. Before Daenerys went off the handle, you were rooting for Daenerys to usurp Cersei and regain the Targaryen seat back, of course, right? I wanted all that. The Lannisters as a whole are not a great family. They're not really made out of the greatest of people, but I don't know. Cersei's rage has just been something that's been on my mind as I'm watching clips back. I'm scrolling through TikTok, things that are coming up, and I sit there and I go, wow, I don't know. I think that the reason why she was a villain that you love to hate was because how much you can understand how she got to the way that she was. So that's really just what I want to come on here and say. Um, I'd love to get your guys' opinion. I think that not only is Cersei such a well written character by George R.R. Martin, but I also think that she was incredibly, like, she was the, I was going to say she was incredibly well acted. That does not make sense. The actress, Lena Headey, did a phenomenal job. as Cersei, and I think no one else could have brought her to life the way that Lena did. So definitely remember that the reason why you dislike Cersei so much is because the actor did their job. So yeah, that's just really what I wanted to say. Now I've done two Game of Thrones characters. I don't know, I just love talking about them because again, there's just so much lore. But this will be, I believe, my fourth character analysis. I've done one again on Viserys Targaryen III. I've also done one on the video game character Dutch Vanderlyn from Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. And my most recent was about the character Blaine De Beers from one of my favorite shows of all time, iZombie. So if you have a moment, you like any of the things that I just mentioned, please make sure that you check that out. And please make sure you are subscribed if you are not. GVN is growing every day, and it makes me so happy as someone who has literally been with this organization since about 2017, 2018. So yeah, I am very happy to see the way that GVN is growing. So if you like this video, please give it a like. Tell me what you think. Tell me what character analysis you'd like to see me do next. And I'd love to do it. So in the meantime, everyone, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.